constitutes a crucial pillar for the regional and global security governance now. So, as a major energy importer and key economic partner of the Middle East nations, China has long maintained a peaceful and tranquil Middle East free from prolonged military confrontation, creates the favorable extreme environment for its sustainable development and diplomatic line out. What I mean is that you can look at the Middle East for the last half a century, maybe longer, that we didn't see any sign that the conflict will end in near future, since you have so many years, decades, these conflicts, so how many hatreds and conflicts between the Middle East countries, Islamic countries, and Israel. So this is from Chinese perspective. I think I'm not so optimistic to see the Middle East the future. First and foremost, the Middle East peace safeguards Chinese energy security and geopolitical stability. I mean that this is very important for China. The Middle East remains the primary source of Chinese crude oil imports, and persistent U.S. Iran hostility pose direct risks of supply chain disruption and regional energy market turbulence, as we see in the last 4 months. Historically, you see the U.S. administrations has weaponized energy resources to contain China's development, imposing restrictive measures targeting oil supply from Venezuela in Latin America to Iran in the Middle East. So a de-escalated and peaceful Middle East can effectively diffuse the spillover risk of such energy weaponization, securing stable energy imports, and eliminating a major potential danger for Chinese economic operational security. That's a China hope. I think it's one of the purpose China wants the peace in the Middle East is from the geopolitical energy crisis, energy security perspective. Furthermore, the reduction of excessive U.S. military and geopolitical intervention in the Middle East creates legitimate space for China's constructive influence. This could be true, but I just think talk about that is might be a hope for China, for the Middle East to have more cooperation. But basically what I mean, I just looking forward to the future from a from optimistic way, but the reality different. But unlike the Western powers, there's prioritize the military presence and military and the geopolitical competition. China different engaged with the different measures with the Middle East countries through in-depth economic, trade, technology, and cultural cooperation. So this pragmatic and win-win partnership focus on infrastructure development, energy collaborations, technology innovations, effectively is improving the local economic vitality and regional stability. So as Middle East states increasingly pursue strategic autonomy, China's non-interference and mutual beneficial cooperation model can become a vital driving force for the regional long-term development and future consolidating the bilateral ties. Despite China's strong desire for the regional peace, the current China-US-Iran conflict show no sign for the quick resolution. So with profound structural contradiction, sustaining the confrontation, the two sides hold fundamentally divergent core strategic interests. So the conflict has inflicted asymmetrical losses on each party. So while the US seeks to maintain its regional hegemony and military dominance in the Middle East, the Iran has witnessed a significant surge in the national pride amidst external suppression and military pressure, strengthening, strengthening its resolve to uphold sovereignty and resist external interference. So this makes a rapid political settlement extremely difficult. Meanwhile, the prolonged US-Iran standoff has triggered a profound credibility crisis over US security commitments in the Middle East. So the regional countries has gradually realized the US security guarantee are not universal protection, but tool to serving the Washington's hegemonic strategies. So the U.S. tendency to prioritize its own interests, selectively fulfilling promises and initiate regional conflicts, has enrolled the Middle East national confidence in the U.S.-led security mechanism, promoting them to pursue diversifying diplomatic and security layouts. So this is, I think, for the near future, maybe in the 5 or 3 years, and can be seen that this is a kind of changing mentality of Middle East countries toward the U.S. military presence there. There are some signs over there. I don't want to repeat as everyone you know that. In addition, the U.S.-Iran confrontation has imposed and aggravated internal divisions within the Western bloc, along with the declining global influence of NATO. European countries hold divergent attitude towards Washington's Middle East policies, with many reluctant to be dragged into the prolonged regional conflicts, has harmed their own economic and security interests. Such divergences has weakened the NATO's cross-regional cross-regional coordination capability and strategic cohesion, marking the continuous decline in the bloc's ability to dominate global security affairs. So this is another multilateral way to understand how the Western where the Western influence, including the European countries, their military, economic, and trade influence over there in the Middle East. I see that there will be changes. So look ahead. China will continue to uphold the above objective and impulsive stance, advocating dialogue and negotiation as a fundamental solution to the US-Iran conflict. It will deepen mutual beneficial cooperation with all Middle East countries, support regional states in grasping China's own future and advance regional security architecture reform. So in involving Middle East landscape, China will remain a builder of peace, a promoter of stability, and defender of common interests, facilitating inclusive developments and lasting tranquility in the region. As a matter of fact, from my point of view, that I will conclude. Will maybe I can answer some questions in the RA time. I would like to make a conclusion that China now see the Middle East. I think we hope if we talk about the war, the post-war era, I mean post U.S.-Iran war either in the Middle East. I'm not confident to see that until now, but I do see some already examples have happened that, as I mentioned, the Middle East countries' attitude toward the American military presence. And how the Iran, I think Iran changed a lot. Iran perspective towards the neighboring countries, for example, Pakistan, Oman, and other the coastal countries. That is this kind of thinking itself. Iran can be much more stronger that after the war, even with the nuclear plant was destroyed, but on a conventional military way, that Iran can do something. That is kind of a new balance from my point of view. Make the Middle East country to think what a kind of future that benefit to all the countries in the other country in the Middle East. It's kind of U.S. dominance landscape. It benefit to just one part of the country, or just the multilateralism, if we say, is much more other peaceful, coexistence that in the Middle East can benefit to all the countries. So China, from my point of view, I hope that in the near future, the Middle East can become a much more diversified, divergent situation that makes no foreign interference, particularly militarily, to make these countries rely on one part of the country, rely on USA or rely on Iran. So that can be, from my point of view, there's a multilateral way to make the peace in the future towards, particularly in terms of the Middle East. I think it should be possible. That depends on how these countries in the Middle East, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, and other countries coordinate, including Pakistan. I think that can make these countries to think in 5 or 10 years, maybe. I think in the future, 3 or 5 years, that think deeply, comprehensively, that's what kind of a new balance, a new kind of landscape politically, internationally, or regionally, benefits, make this region peaceful, that not the war always happen this year or next year or another war happen. I think that will be, I think, a new kind of tendency for Chinese, for the other countries to think about this. I'm sorry, I stop here. That's I can answer questions later if possible. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Go. I was about to interrupt you because every speaker have 15 to 20 minutes. So you are approaching to the 20 minutes, but you already finished your lecture. Yes, the trust on US has been eroded, and maybe there is a need of a new type of, you can say, the new type of arrangement for sustainable peace in the region. And as you are telling us, so there can be maybe there a role of Pakistan in the region for the sustainable peace. Coming to this question, I would like to request Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa Saab. He served at a different important post in the army. Later on, he has become a prominent expert, and he advocates for the peace throughout the world. Sir, floor is yours, and your specific questions for you, as I already mentioned to you, is what can be the role of Pakistan in the new architecture, the new framework of peace in the region? Sir, you have 15 to 20 minutes.
Thank you, Shkil. Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon to all my friends who are on the panel and also those who are listening to us.
And especially, sir, I want to mention Lieutenant Naeem Lodi Saab has also joined us.
Zabardast. So you don't need me then. I think
no, sir, you are here. I am just mentioning about him out of respect.
No, he is a wonderful human being. And,
yes, sir.
A very sensible, mature person.
Yes, sir.
I have a slightly different viewpoint, and maybe in a way certain hawkish, and maybe subjective. So let me begin by admitting that that is how I look at this whole thing. I don't know how we see this attack on Iran, combined American and Israeli attack. Generally, we stop short of, I think, what is their purpose, main purpose. The way I look at it, uh, I agree with Professor from China, I'm forgetting his name, that
Professor
basically,
Go.
Professor Gao, basically the overall aim is, number one, to block Chinese expansion or increasing influence in the region and beyond. And number two, while Russia is engaged on one side in Ukraine, the entire West has tried and they have failed to defend it. They want another side also uh, from where they can pressurize Russia and block Russian influence in the region, any expansion of influence in the region. And third, there are three entry points to Indian Ocean. Bab al-Mandab, Yemen on one side, Somalia on the other side, and Somaliland on the other side. I'm mentioning it especially because it was recognized by Israel just before the war started. Yemen, of course, has a problem and has been a problem for the last, I think, about 3, 4, 5, 6 decades. Strait of Hormuz is the second one. And third is the Strait of Malacca. Any country or any group of countries which controls these three entry points into Indian Ocean, they can dictate terms to the world. Number 4, control over international resources is also possible because if these three choke points are controlled, are managed, that is where the powers concerned can exercise influence on the energy resources, not only of Iran, but way beyond Iran, going up to Caspian Sea resources, because those resources are also reputed to be very, very large resources of the region that is yet to be exploited. President Putin, of course, did a very wise thing about a few years back when he created a group of countries which are bordering Caspian Sea and bringing them to a proper documented agreement of the resource distribution and the influence areas. Having said that, the Americans also have a problem. The problem is that having ruled the world in a way for the last so many years, it is natural that decline is the ultimate end of all great powers. I personally feel that America is on a downs, is slipping very fast towards South Pole. And any power that actually is on decline, they fail to realize that pure strength and its application is not such an easy thing to handle. Their impression that this awe and whatever kind of operation against Iran and eliminating the leadership will help them in overrunning Iran, controlling Iran, subjugating Iran. Starting with this aim, they found that Iran is a different country. It has a different geography, it has different people, it has a different history, different civilization. And having absorbed their offensive last year, Iran understood the game and they had prepared themselves accordingly. Everybody knows about what is happening in the war, what is going on in the war. I don't see the war ending. Much that I would like a peace in the region, which is very beneficial for everyone, mostly Pakistan. Why for Pakistan specifically? Because we have an enemy on the eastern border. Our western borders are also not very safe in the sense that America is also creating kind of a base in Afghanistan through the through their finances, through their already available human resource in the region, in Afghanistan particularly, and they're now enrolling so-called terrorist organizations as part of the Afghan army. And this threat was felt by Putin already. President Putin invited the Taliban, and now even Tajikistan is preparing itself against the possible onslaught of terrorists organized or dressed as Afghan national. So therefore, it is critical for Pakistan that this region remains in peace, particularly Iran, and Iran stays stable. Simply because if Iran is unstable, the effect also is felt by Pakistan, not only economically. But if Iran were to fall to the American designs and the Israeli designs, we'll have this border also unsafe. And there'll be a problem for Pakistan as well. Now, having said that, laid the foundation of what I think. I think Pakistan's role in this whole game has been very, very critical. Few issues that have come to light and few which haven't come to light. That is where Iran has complete confidence in Pakistan. That is where, because there's no other country in the region which can talk to Iran the way Pakistan can. And there's no other country to which Americans talk to other than Pakistan. Because the Americans know that the security architecture that they had created in the region as the first line of defense of Israel based on UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, have that been, that line actually was breached. Behind you had Jordan, that also got overwhelmed in the sense that Iranians were able to cross over. And finally, when you come to Israel, the 4 layers of their defense were also penetrated. This is a situation where the Americans, having failed to realize the limitations of power, particularly as a declining superpower, now they are stuck with that situation. That is where they need Pakistan's help. If Pakistan were not to be in the region, and Pakistan had not played its very, very constructive role in keeping Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait out of the war, despite the fact that Iran on their soil on the American basis, actually was breach of their sovereignty. But they were, I think, sensible enough to understand Pakistan's viewpoint. And having done that, Pakistan now is in a dominant position that as and when this war ends, which is going to continue in one form or the other, whatever happens, because these talks which are going on, presently held in Mays, they probably will reach certain solution. There'll be some agreement. But there's no guarantee to this agreement, whatever agreement is brought about. Because Trump's history is replete with those examples. In fact, American history is replete with examples where they have disregarded all agreements and gone ahead with whatever they thought is right. And so Israel. As we speak, Israel is again pushing forward in Lebanon. That is something that Iran is not going to tolerate. So that is where I say things can go south again. Pakistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. And then we add Turkey to it. Because I just read an article where President Erdogan made a very startling revelation. He said the world doesn't realize, they'll come to know sooner or later, that how serious a conspiracy was thwarted by Armenians, Kurds, Turks, Iraqis, and Iranians. Which again leads me to the idea that the offensive against Iran was not limited in nature. And now that Iran stood this ground, they are now stuck with this. Why I'm mentioning Turkey is because again it's a power in the region. It's a Muslim country. It is technologically very advanced, has its own manufacturing industry, very advanced industry, and a power. When you add these four and Egypt, you'll find that there's a very but natural for this region to think in different terms now. Saudi Arabia has already offered twice. Once when said that we should go into no war pact against Iran, and second when he said that we should sit down with Iran to redraw the map of Gulf Cooperation Council and think of how to come to terms with each other and live in peace. That is where Pakistan can again play a very vital role. And Pakistan can be and should be part of, and Pakistan is part of this game. So that is where I think is critical, Pakistan's role beyond the facilitator, beyond the negotiating, helping out the negotiations, beyond this, as the international power structure so far in flux is probably settling down, as I see, towards global south. Pakistan again becomes pivotal in this whole game. Sitting just across Strait of Hormuz, Bab al-Mandab being in its reach, and Pakistan's ability to reach out and help out if there is a need to in terms of military, I think makes Pakistan the vital player in this whole game. The world actually is going to see, as just our Professor Gao mentioned, Chinese political influence aided and I should say vetted by their considerable financial influence, economic influence, and now technologically advancement that we have seen in their technology. China and Pakistan, their partnership and their relationship, again makes Pakistan vital in this game. China has to emerge as the superpower. And for that to happen, so far militarily, Chinese have displayed their strength, but they're weak in terms of navy, whereas America has 11 nuclear-powered carrier aircraft, carrier crafts. Chinese have only 3. America is still superior in terms of their air power. But when you come down to the latest now, the changes that are happening in the warfare itself, I think China has to at some one point and the other show its military muscle to add to its already considerable political, economic, and technological strength. I'll end here. If there is any question, I can answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Definitely there would be question, but you have mentioned 2 or 3 things very important. Number one, the Strait of Hormuz. We have a special lecture today on the subject, and we have requested that MS Said, he will be talking later. But right now, you mentioned about the role of Turkey in the region. I think that is a very important, and that's why we have specially invited Dr. Sarhan Afghan. He is the director of Center for Iranian Studies in Ankara and associate professor at Marmara University Institute of Middle East and Islamic countries. His research focus on Iranian domestic and foreign policy, regional security, political transformation, and interstate relations in the Middle East. He has published on the subject extensively. Sir, the floor is yours.
Shakil, thank you very much for the invitation and for this very illuminating panel. And assalamu alaikum to everyone, by the way. I have carefully listened to Professor Shu Tang, if I am pronouncing correctly. Thank you.
Yes.
And also, thank you. And also General Ghulam Mustafa. I learned extensively from both of them, the Chinese perspective and also the Pakistani perspective, which is, by the way, the Pakistani perspective is being widely discussed in Turkey nowadays, because I think Pakistan has been doing an excellent job in mediating between Iran and the United States, which is, I think, an mission impossible. I mean, it's very difficult because there are serious problems, and somebody had to put wisdom in this process, and Pakistan did exactly that. And that there were times, for example, since April the 8th, from the declaration of the ceasefire onward, a lot of people in Turkey said that the ceasefire could be broken at any moment, but then largely thanks to Pakistan, the ceasefire kept on, and we have now the Islamabad MOU. And I think the Islamabad MOU should not be underestimated. I think it's very careful and very wisely crafted text. And I am one of those people who is rather optimistic about the ongoing negotiations between Iran and the United States with the mediation of Pakistan, definitely. But unlike, I mean, for Turkey, the war between Iran, the US, and Israel is an entirely different story, by the way, because Ankara has been very much critical of Israel, especially since October 7th, and Israel's expansionist policy in the Middle East, the Israeli genocide in Gaza and beyond, in Lebanon, for example, in Syria, and then the Israeli war, unlawful war, launched by Israel against Iran last year in June. And at every stage, Ankara has been openly critical of the Israeli policy and of the Israeli behavior in the Middle East. And I think if you ask anyone in Ankara today, I'm not a politician, I'm an expert, but if you ask people in Ankara, what is number one security problem in the Middle East nowadays, recently, they would definitely say Israel. Because Israel is a security problem and is becoming more of a security problem for our region, not only because of its aggression against Iran, but also because of its aggression almost all over the region, definitely Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria, as I also mentioned. And when the war started in late February, 28th of February, the Turkish position, as you all know it, was very clear. The war should not have started anyway. And there were times, especially in late January, when Turkey started to mediate between the US and Iran, and then the negotiations were held in Oman instead of Istanbul. But that was okay because, as President Erdogan also said, the priority for Turkey was to have the diplomatic negotiations and was to prevent the war from happening. But then eventually we had a war started by the Americans and the Israelis. And the Turkish position was at that point as well was very clear. And President Erdogan called the war a senseless war, a meaningless war, and he said the war should stop as soon as possible. Why? Because of the security implications of the war in the region, its effect definitely to Iraq and also to the Gulf region, because when the war started, Iran was targeted by the Israelis and the Americans. Iran started to target its neighbors in the Gulf region, which created further security problems for all of us, for all the Gulf countries, starting from Kuwait all the way down to Oman. And also at that point, Turkey also started to criticize Iran for targeting its neighbors. And Ankara said several times that this will not solve Iran's security concerns, but that is an entirely different story. Maybe we can come back to that in the Q&A session. And then we had this question of Strait of Hormuz, because that is one of the significant geopolitical waterways, and it was very significant for Turkey as well, because of Turkey's need to exported energy, oil and natural gas, definitely. And the Turkish position was very clear on that as well. Turkey supported freedom of navigation at the Strait of Hormuz. And now we have this 14 article MOU between Washington and Tehran. So what is going to happen from this point on? And I think Pakistan's role is going to be very important for the safety of the negotiations and for commitment of both of the parties to do diplomatic negotiations. So Pakistan is going to be playing the key role in the negotiations. But then there is the Iranian side of this process, because Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, we all know of him. He became the supreme leader of the country in 1989. And since then, he has been the sole leader of the country. Okay, I mean, if you look at the power structure in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and there is no one close to the supreme leader. There is the second constitutional authority, the president, but then the powers of the supreme leader are a lot more significant and a lot more determining than the powers of the president. And Ali Khamenei was assassinated by the Americans and the Israelis, which created a shock in Iran, but not to the extent the Americans were expecting. I think obviously the Americans expected that if they kind of killed Ali Khamenei, the regime would either collapse or shatter. But none of these happened. Iranian regime stayed intact. The Islamic Republic stayed intact. And just a few days after Mujtaba Khamenei, as you know, his son was elected as the country's new supreme leader. But then there were debates inside Iran. Okay, some people supported negotiations and the ceasefire, but some people criticized the negotiations, and they did not necessarily support a ceasefire with the Americans, because they said if we cannot establish our deterrence against Americans once and for all, the Americans will keep on attacking us in the future as well. Because there was a war last year in June, and now there was another war. So some people inside Iran, they said we have to go all the way, whatever that should mean. That's an entirely different story, of course, because they said they thought Iran had the upper hand in the war by deterring the Americans, by closing the Strait of Hormuz, and also by attacking the countries in the region, which they thought put a lot of pressure on the Trump administration. And according to this narrative, the Trump administration was unable to keep fighting anymore. I mean, because they thought Trump wanted to end the war as soon as possible. So some people said Iran should go all the way to be able to get necessary privileges or necessary guarantees from the Americans against any future aggression. But then there was another group of people inside Iran. I think Mr. Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf, the chief of the negotiating team, was among them. They supported the negotiations. And these people, Mr. Ghalibaf and also Mr. Abbas Araghchi, Iran's foreign minister, they supported the negotiations. And by the way, after the war in June, the 12-day war, I was in Iran last year in November. There was a conference, an event organized by Iran's Minister of Foreign Affairs in Tehran, and I attended that conference. There was not current war at the recent war yet, because it was November to the end of last year. And while evaluating Iran's performance and deterrence in the 12-day war, people in that event, starting from Mr. Abbas Araghchi and some other officials as well, they always spoke about negotiation, and they always expressed their determination to find a negotiated solution to this crisis. But then this negotiation, as we all know, didn't work out, and then we had a second war. Now, what is the question? What is the problem for Turkey and also for Iran? I think for Iran, the main problem is economic, okay? Because when the Americans started this blockade against Iran at the Strait of Hormuz, some people inside Iran underestimated the American blockade, and we all know that the blockade somehow worked to the advantage of the Americans. It hurt the Iranian economy further, and the Iranian economy has not doing well anyway over the last few years. We all witnessed the countrywide demonstrations in January this year because there is poverty and there is unemployment and there is currency problem inside Iran. So I think Iran's decision was, I think, made out of largely economic reasons. Okay, and also security-wise, if you look at the MOU, I think there are several points in that MOU which very much meet Iran's security concerns as well, expectations as well. First, Lebanon. General Mustafa definitely referred to the ongoing violations in Lebanon by the Israelis. That's definitely going to be a problem, but still, Lebanon was put in the MOU as one of the articles, and ending the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, was put in this MOU, which is, I think, very significant for Iran because Hezbollah and Lebanon is what is left from Iran's axis of resistance. Okay, there are groups in Iraq as well, but Syria is gone. It's not in Iran's axis of resistance anymore. So Iran has been investing on Hezbollah for decades, and they definitely do not want to lose Hezbollah. So they have to support Hezbollah, and they have to end the war in Lebanon as well. So Lebanon was put in that MOU, which is, I think, one of the most significant articles in that understanding. And also, Strait of Hormuz was put in a very vague way, I think. It's still not very clear if Iran is going to hold the control of the Strait of Hormuz together with Oman, supposedly, because many countries in the Middle East, and to the best of my knowledge, China as well, and also, if I'm not wrong, Pakistan as well, they all support navigation, freedom of navigation at the Strait of Hormuz. So if Iran insists on keeping control of Strait of Hormuz, I think that at some point that can be a problem in the diplomatic negotiations. But as far as I understand, Iran is trying to use the Strait of Hormuz as a diplomatic leverage for the ongoing negotiations. If Iran gets what it's expecting from the negotiations, then I think it can change its position on the Strait of Hormuz. Otherwise, I don't think Iran can hold the control of the Strait of Hormuz forever. I mean, against the will of many of the regional countries. Definitely, and also some global powers as well, including China, and also some very major powers like Pakistan as well. So, and the Strait of Hormuz was one of the issues as well. And the other issue, one of the distressing problems for Iran is the sanctions regime imposed by the Americans, also by the United Nations Security Council. And that also was put in the MOU, and Iran was promised sanctions relief at some point, although it's not clear when and how, because as you know, there is a very complex and a very intricate sanctions regime against Iran, which started all the way from the Islamic Revolution onward in 1979. You have every sort of sanctions imposed on Iran during the last almost 5 decades. So lifting those sanctions will be very difficult. But it was also promised to Iran in the MOU, which very much empowered the pro-negotiation people, starting with Mr. Ghalibaf himself. And also this question of frozen funds of the Islamic Republic was also addressed in the MOU, although it's not very clear and how and when. That is also one of the key problems for the Iranian side, but still it was put in the MOU. And there is also the question of $300 billion funds promised to Iran for Iran's reconstruction. But I think that is almost the least clear aspect of the MOU. It's not clear who is going to grant that money. and how they are going to grant that money to Iran. But still, I think Iran is very much determined to keep the negotiation process going, and they are trying to reach a negotiate a solution to this current crisis. Because going back to the war, I think going back to the war, if the Americans start targeting Iran's civilian infrastructure, I think that is going to be devastating. Okay. We know, for example, Americans targeted some of Iran's desalination centers in the Gulf region, which very much hurted the civilian life in the region because people need water and they very much depend on desalinated water from those facilities. And if the Americans start targeting Iran's electricity infrastructure, for example, Iran is a huge country, as we know. It has a population of around 90 million, and life can be very difficult if Americans start attacking Iran's civilian infrastructure. So I think Iranians seem to be very determined to keep the negotiations going, and also Ankara is very determined in supporting the negotiations going, and there might be some problems on the way to the final deal as is put in the MOU. But I am still one of those people who are optimistic for as far as the current negotiations are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sirhan. I think you have highlighted 2 or 3 points, very important points. Number one, so economic development is the right of Iran. So economic sanction should be lifted like any other country. It's the right of Iran. Then the Strait of Hormuz. Although we have a special person to deliver a lecture on it, I am just keeping his name for the last speaker. So Strait of Hormuz, that is also my point of view. So it would be very difficult to continue it indefinitely. Let's hope the negotiations continue and peace come back. Now we would like to move our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Evan Papinen, if I pronounce it right. He is a project manager at the Evgeny Primakov Center for the International Cooperation, and he is also engaged with the Middle East and work. And last time when I was in Russia, so we have a very good discussion because I was invited by the Primakov Center. So we have very good discussions, and they have invited all the stakeholders from the region, all the countries. So let's listen to Mr. Evan, what he thinks and what Russia thinks.
Thank you, Mr. Ramai, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to see and hear you again. And it's an honor to speak among the esteemed panelists. I generally agree with some of the points previously mentioned, so I apologize in advance if I repeat some of the points just to emphasize my consent, and especially appreciate Dr. Sirhan's raising the issue of Iran's domestic political dynamics, which is really influential and important in terms of the negotiation process and the situation unfolding. So I would like to briefly delve into the consequences mostly of the war for Iran, for the region, and some other players concerned, some other actors concerned. So far, we cannot talk about the end of the war, as has been previously mentioned. The hot phase of the conflict has basically died down because the parties realized the futility of continued hostilities and took time to rethink their goals and objectives in this conflict. To date, the United States and Iran have only reached a ceasefire, a memorandum in general terms, which, however, at best would serve as a prelude to a more detailed discussion of sensitive issues and the future contours of bilateral relations. Still, the positions of both parties, as has also been mentioned, are very far from each other and are hardly reconcilable in the short run. And moreover, Israel does not consider itself part of the agreement and has no intention of maintaining it. Vice versa, it seems Israel is eager to undermine the fragile negotiation process. Iran, as it seems, has developed a common opinion that it is the strategic winner in this conflict, because victory is associated with the aggressor's inability to achieve their goals in the conflict. Iran's successfully deterring the aggression of the USA, which is basically the global hegemon still, and also Iran acquiring new strategic advantages, which is control of Hormuz and the ability to perform massive shelling of American military installations in the region. The terms of the recently signed memorandum appear to be more favorable to Iran, though this doesn't still promise anything specific. At the same time, conservative circles in Iran, those close to the security bloc, apparently persist in their belief that the negotiations must be protracted up to a certain point because Iran now is in a position of strength. And a protracted conflict is more beneficial than peace because it politically exhausts the United States. To put it simply, the longer the conflict persists, the weaker the position of the US becomes, and the weaker their international political authority becomes, which strengthens Iran, basically. The Persian Gulf countries have discovered over the recent months that if an open military confrontation erupts in the region, neither American security guarantees nor efforts to establish a partnership with Iran, which, for example, Saudi Arabia has been after over the recent years, can protect the Gulf monarchies from being drawn into the conflict. Profound disruption in logistics, damage to infrastructure, a blow to the image of a safe economic haven, all of these factors threaten to undermine the strategies of the Gulf countries aimed at integrating into the global economy and promoting national economic development. Therefore, in my opinion, it's likely that the Gulf monarchies will adjust their foreign policy strategies to actually to respond to these new international realities. Minimizing the risks associated with exposed vulnerability of the Strait of Hormuz will require intensifying efforts to diversify logistics routes. Also, the military experience of the recent war will likely push the leaders of the Gulf countries to strengthen their domestic defense capabilities, focusing on cheaper and more affordable air and missile defense systems, those of low altitude quality. To my mind, countries of the region, of the Persian Gulf region, will not give up their reliance on American security guarantees, even in case America decides to play down its military presence in the region. But they will also likely seek to diversify their security sources. Risk management obviously requires promoting dialogue with Iran because Iran is an inseparable security actor in the region, as recent events have especially demonstrated. So areas such as regional security, navigation in Hormuz, energy connectivity, religious tourism, and ultimately foreign investment will likely become high up on the agenda between Iran and the Gulf countries in the medium run. At the same time, the foreign policy trajectories of the Gulf countries will likely be quite different. As the war has demonstrated, their positions on Iran are far from being uniform, with, for example, Saudi Arabia taking one stance, as previous panelists have shown, Oman another one, and the UAE taken a third direction by strengthening cooperation with Israel, which is basically anti-Iran oriented. Let me be optimistic in a sense and make the risky assumption, though it is already being voiced by some Russian and Western experts, that it is interaction in specific economic niches, in specific economic fields, that can facilitate interaction and building practical cooperation between Iran and the Gulf states, as well as Iran and the United States, even. Uh, I admit that Iran, under certain circumstances, may prioritize the need for economic investment, for economic recovery post-conflict, over its zeal for military political confrontation. At the same time, Arab countries and America have ample capital interested in opening up the Iranian market. However, even discussing such a scenario is only possible if there is sustainable military political stabilization. And its feasibility also depends on the views, motivations, and interests of specific individuals and factions who are in power in the countries involved. As for the future of Iran-US relations, it's hard to predict, especially given the highly personalized nature of American foreign policy today. In the short term, a likely scenario is continuing the no war, no peace situation with protracted negotiations, occasional shellings, and so on. While in the medium term, in my opinion, the conflict might become dormant, just as it used to be, for example, under Joe Biden administration. In any case, I'm sure the United States will continue its policy of containing, deterring Iran in the region, no matter how other dimensions of their relations unfold. My one before the last point is about Russia and China. The two countries are not directly involved in resolving the conflict. During the hot phase of the conflict, Moscow and Beijing, in my opinion, have little leverage over the situation and cannot suggest any viable solutions. However, both for Russia and for China, the failure of the United States to achieve their results, to achieve their goals in this aggressive and arbitrary war against Iran has demonstrated the limits of American military power, as has already been mentioned today, and the decline of their political authority. Both Moscow and Beijing are interested in the victory of Iran, which is their strategic partner. And in my opinion, once the hot phase of the conflict is over, Russia and China will be able to actively engage with all the parties in the region on economic, military, and political security issues, because both countries have their own global and regional security and economic vision and vested interests. So, to sum up, the Middle East, in my opinion, is likely to become an even less predictable and more polycentric region after the war. So generally speaking, I'm quite pessimistic about the situation, unfortunately. The war has demonstrated that attempts to impose some order by force only create new problems. And while for some forces and actors in the region and around the globe, conflict may be preferable to diplomacy and negotiations, unfortunately. The conflict has set the ground for further political reconfiguration, change of economic connections in the region, and generally a reshuffle of the international order in the region, with probably Iran gaining a more significant role, a more significant say in regional affairs. However, it's yet to be decided. At the same time, the uncontrolled escalation of the conflict has revealed that predictability, verifiability, and risk mitigation, risk minimization are priorities for the countries in the region. Therefore, we can expect that in the medium and long term, countries in the region will make steps to establish mechanisms for pragmatic cooperation and coordination, both on a multilateral basis in areas of common interest, which is, well, ideally should be inclusive of Iran, Gulf monarchies, other interested players in this region. That's it. And I'm ready to delve into more details during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evan. to the point, quick, but very sharp analysis. I think you are right. The region will be more polycentric, and the new power structure may be emerged, and the new countries maybe can take a more prominent role. Like in the last few days, so a few months, we can say the months. Pakistan has emerged as one of the major player in the region. Before the war, Pakistan was not there, but after the war, Pakistan is everywhere. Anyway, these are the questions we have to explore further. So now we are moving to our last presenter. I kept him waiting on purpose because he has to talk about very important issue, Strait of Hormuz. He has his opinion, and he has very refined opinion on the subject. And I know the personally, but I want to know everybody what he thinks about the Strait of Hormuz and its importance. So what can be done on the Strait of Hormuz? Vice Admiral retired Dr. Ahmed Said Saab, ex-president of the National Institute of Maritime Affairs. Sir, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon to every guest and all other audience, those who are listening to us. I think very good presentations have started up, and Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, sir, grateful for your opening remarks, and Dr. Professor Gao has given the Chinese perspective, and then from Turkey, our Dr. Sehran, and now towards the end, before myself, from Russia, our dear guest Ivan has given their perspective. So, as Mr. Rame, my good friend, he has told that I am more linked towards the maritime sector. So I will give you something which is more linked to the maritime. And first, I give you a little global perspective, what I think about, and then coming towards our what has happened in the Middle East, and finally that what I believe and what is my thought about how in the days to come the things will be emerging, inshallah. So coming towards my interpretation is that if we go back in the history, that is 1991, when the United States of USSR was dismembered. Prior to that, from the Second World War to 1991 was the Cold War. So what next if we want to see from the American perspective? We need to see the 1993, the National Security Strategy, which was issued. And it clearly spelled out that United States of America has to prevent new competitors. This was one. And number two was that America must lead the global world at the global level. And number two was that 21st century belongs to United States of America. And to implement that, they started re-nationalizations of societies and alliances. And they generated new bases around the globe and started, and particularly they were focusing on to the non-proliferations. So that started going on. And at that time, if we see the GDP ratio of China and United States of America at that time was 1:16. So by turnover of centuries, it came dropped down to 1:10. So in between one thing which I would like to flag, that is in 2006 when the Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, he came to India and he addressed in their National Assembly. There he gave a term which was, of course, he has taken from the history, and that was Indo-Pacific collaboration to counter China. So that is where this thing started going on. And then we come towards 2011, the first time Obama, he talked about the Pivot Asia. In Pivot Asia, they rearranged their forces pattern towards the Asian side. And that's how the things went on. And towards the 2017, then the Indo-Pacific strategy came into play, and then 2018, in the national security strategy, they highlighted China to be their main competitor, and that's how they started rearranging their forces. I think it's very clear that this all strategy was aligned to constrain or restrict Chinese seaward movements, and especially on trade. Why? Because if you have to identify a competitor, if I'm the American and uh, you have to stop its rise, and then what is the main area? Because 80% of the global trade is at sea. So that's how I'll go about restricting their movements at sea. I think in the opening, uh, 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 General Ghulam Mustafa had highlighted the importance of Indian Ocean as well as its choke points. So he very rightly pointed out that the Strait of Malacca, Suez, and Bab el Mandab, these are the 3 points. If these are choked, or they are controlled, so world about 60 to 70% of the global trade one can control. This is how what is the importance of Indian Ocean. So that's how the game started going on, and placement of the things went on. So how the Iran came into play? That is another question I think everyone has touched about, and that is it was related to the China in terms of their energy corridor. So 80% of the energy was going from Russia, from the Iran. So that's how the Iran came into the calculus. And the purpose was a quick victory going along like the Venezuela, and have one flag they had in one hand, and the second flag they wanted, that was from the Venezuela. They wanted to have another flag from quick victory in Iran, and then go towards China and have a meeting with President Xi, and Trump would be sitting with two victory flag in his hand. So that was, I think, in my calculation, the purpose, and then negotiate from the position of strength. But of course, Iran had learned a lot of lessons from their previous interaction, which they had in June last year. So, in their calculation, now they were very prepared to undertake this, whatever was coming up. So, this is a little background. And on 27th, when the first attack came in, right after the Iranians were very, very clear what to do in terms of repulsion, in terms of safeguarding their assets, and in terms of choking the Strait of Hormuz. And they had already prepared their forces according to that. So, in my view, this was a very well thought out game plan from the Iranian side. And at the same time, on the other side, if we see from the USA side, I think they did not have a clear exit policy. Induction was there, but de-induction, how they will have to do, that was the problem. So clouding with the Israel, I think they carved out a very quick victory, which did not go into their favor. So now, another point which I want to highlight is that is regarding the scale of Strait of Hormuz, how it impacted the globe. Earlier on, if you see World War I and World War II, how as a student of history, I see what is the World War. World War is measured in two terms. One is its scale of engagement of the countries, and number two is the scale of effects it gives to the world. So earlier on, from the World War I and World War II, if we see the 30 countries participated, around 30 plus in World War I and about 100 plus in World War II. But the casualty rates, we see about 17 million was in the World War I, and 50 plus was in the World War II. So the difference which created after the invention of the nuclear weapons. Of course, now we do not see a world war coming up, but if we weigh the incident of Strait of Hormuz and this effect, it has globally affected. Although all the countries did not actively participate, but under UN, if we say it was in 192 or 196 countries, every country was actually hurt badly. And its effects are going to go in the next year as well. That is what has been predicted. So in my view, if we take it in the modern warfare, we might have gone through a third world war as far as its effects are concerned. But it is debatable. This is my point of view. Now, as it was said that now coming towards the Strait of Hormuz. Now there are legal issues and there are some issues which are related to the sovereignty. So legally, if we say the straits are under the United States Convention on Law of the Sea, they enjoy the immunity of in terms of all the shipping and the aircraft which are passing through the straits. They have the right to transit. Now, what is right to transit is that means they need not to give details of their cargo. They can, for the submarines, they can go submerged also, and in times of war, the bordering states cannot stop the transit through that passage. This is very clear. And secondly, they cannot collect the toll as well. And last point is they can only collect, they are responsible to make the safe navigation through those transits. That means in case of Strait of Hormuz, it is the responsibility of Iran and Oman to do the same. But how this thing has been seen from the Iran's perspective. Iran has seen this Strait of Hormuz. Number one, it declares that it declared it that the Strait of Hormuz is our territorial water. So if you go into the territorial water, the regime, then you have an innocent passage. In innocent passage, you have to inform to the country through which you are passing territorial water. Then you have to seek permission, and the country can apply the local law of the land as well. And that's how the Iranian, they declared it as first as a territorial water, and secondly, then they went for asking for the toll. So internationally, if we see, the local laws cannot be in contravention to the international law. That means this law, which they pass through their own legislation, and they empowered the IRGC to control the Strait of Hormuz. Actually, it is in contrast with the United Nations law Convention on Law of the Sea. But the problem is that, like Turkey, Iran has not, Turkey has neither signed nor ratified. United States, again, not signed, not ratified. But Iran has signed but not ratified. So this is the status. Excuse me. So in this case, I think Iran knows it, that towards the end of the day, Strait of Hormuz will have to be open for the normal traffic. And however, I see that there would be a local mechanism coming up which will be controlling the Strait of Hormuz for the sake of their sovereignty. How they perceive that if the men of war or warships, they come into this area, they should have some restriction from the Iran and Oman side, plus from the countries which are inside. I correlate this to the Turkey, the agreement, convention, which is Montreux Convention. It was signed in 1936 regarding the Black Sea. And Turkey is controlling, because of that, the Dardanelles Straits and Strait of Bosphorus. And in that, the normal trade has the transit passage. However, the ships, which are the men of war and warships, they seek permission 15 days before. Then they have certain restrictions. They cannot stay inside the Black Sea more than 15 days. And they have some tonnage also restrictions. So altogether, this treaty is going on, but this treaty is outside the UN Convention Law of the Sea. So I also foresee in days to come, I think already the talks are on between the Iran as well as the Oman. And there is likely to come a convention of the similar pattern in which I think Iran and the countries inside, they will have the overall control of the ships which are coming inside and which can generate something for their sovereignty. So this is my take on this. And any questions, I think, which is going to come. And I agree that in days to come, the regionalism is taking more stronger space, and whatever solutions are coming up, those are the regional led, regional owned, and that's how the Pakistan's importance is coming very prominent. And days to come, I think Turkey, Pakistan, GCC countries, along with Iran and Egypt, I think a lot of good things are going to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. MSA. And you have a glass of water. I think you are feeling itchy throat. So this is all from our side. I think from the discussion we can conclude a few things. Number one, the power is not a solution, or the war is not a solution. And usually I say this: with the power you can win a war, but not peace. Even in this case, you are not able to win a war with the power. So for the peace, you need sustainable development. I think that is the formula, dialogue, and the development which China is presenting. On the regional level, definitely there will be reconfiguration. So the new alliances will emerge, or the partnership will emerge. But there is also one or two very pertinent questions which we could not discuss today, but we can discuss in another discussion. Number one, the southern institutions and their role in the global peace, because these days we are talking a lot about the new world order, but we forget one thing: the previous two world orders came with the new world war. So in the after the World War II, we have a new world order which is still going on, and we are talking about a new world order. Either it is possible, peacefully possible, or there would be a war. But some experts, they claim the World War III is already going on. But the indicators, the elements of the World War IIIs are different from the traditional. In the new World War III, so the elements of war are trade, technology, financial systems. And USA is abusing those systems, and they are putting sanctions. They are criminalizing the countries. They are not allowing countries to use the financial system. Like Russia, they have imposed the sanctions. Then they have launched a trade war, and now they also have launched a technological war. So these have the global implications. So let's hope the sense will prevail and the peace will prevail. And the second question, as we were talking about the role of southern institutions like SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization could not do anything to stop this war, the aggression of China, USA on the Iran, because Iran is a member of SCO. So this also put a question: so how to refine these new institutions? And the last question is India, because India is playing against the region. So India is trying to become the part with the Israel, not trying to. They have become either the Prime Minister Modi has declared India is the motherland and Israel is the fatherland. I don't know what terminology that is, but he is using that. In this context, maybe we need to wait what will happen in the region. Now, the floor will be open for the question and answer. And before that, if the Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Saab is still with us, if he want to propose something, or the Major General Shahid Hashmat Saab, Samri Salik Saab, Aksar Jandwa Saab, there are so many generals and army men, so it feels like that we are doing a meeting with the army personnel. But I'm happy. So these are the wise voices. They are the wise minds. So they are the minds which talk about the peace. So Naeem Saab.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I must congratulate you for arranging such a good talk on very important subject. I'm grateful to all the speakers. They brought, I think, a lot of richness to the discussion. I only have to make 2 points. One, that I agree with you, and I think Dr. Saeed Saab alluded toward that probably the Third World War, in some other sense, is already going on, or maybe it has already taken place, because whatever is happening in Ukraine and here, I think its effects are such that the changes after this can happen even without another war. This is beside the point. Two things I think we must keep in mind, which are also the reasons of this, conflict, Middle East conflict. One, the Huntington's clash of civilizations. Because if you see the way Muslim countries, bore all the consequences through Arab Spring, starting from Iraq and Sudan and Nigeria and Libya and Yemen, Syria. So we cannot say that this came as a surprise. Everybody, many thinkers were predicting that probably Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, they will be dealt with ultimately. And the second point is that we should remember the dream of Greater Israel, which now they are professing very openly, and a lot of people in America are also supporting it. So whatever happened, it can also be a perpetuation of Huntington's class of civilizations, and also the manifestation of the dream of Greater Israel. I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think, sir, we can also add one thing to a clash of civilization. So there is also issue of the inter-civilization, sub-civilization clash. Like Middle East is the home of Turkish civilization, Arab civilization, Iranian civilization. If we include the MENA, so then Egyptian civilization. So there are many civilizations even within. So that civilization, Muslim civilization. So that question will be complicated in the coming days. Now we can have some questions.